Hi, likewise.
Okay, we still have no councillor Byers, but
Okay, I'll just make a note of that. All right, well, we've gone live.
yep.
Okay.
No,
Well,
no.
welcome everybody to the first SNA meeting for 2022. So yeah, if you've got any questions during the Zoom meeting, just use your hand icon and I'll try and pick up everybody's questions. Fiona just identified during the voting, we'll have to say yes or no rather than just a hand up. And so we'll progress to our standard agenda. So I haven't received any apologies and I've not received an apology from Councillor Byers. So we'll move on if he joins it.
Sorry, Abel, I messaged this morning just saying Don couldn't find the link, so so he might just be a few minutes late. I've sent it through to him.
Okay, well, we'll just note that that he's late and look forward to his presence when he turns up. There is an apology from Chief Executive Cameron. He's away today, so I'll move that we accept that apology. Do I have a second for that, please?
Aye.
Councillor Ruttnclaw, thank you for that. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Carried. Thank you. I've had no request for leave of absence. Take that as being the way. All right. Is there any councillor who may have a conflict of interest on any of the agenda items for today? There being none, we'll move on. There's no public forum. To my knowledge, there's no extra ordinary and urgent items. So I'll move to item 6 and I'll move that the minutes of the previous meeting are true and accurate record. Could I have a second for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Menzies. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Carried. Carried. Thank you. We'll move on to the reports. The first report is on page 15, which is the Downers report presented by Mr. Witham. Now, I'll take it that everybody's had an opportunity to read the report. So I'll just ask Mr. Witham if he's got anything extra to add to his report or anything that you think requires highlighting to the committee. So over to you, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was the non-compliance and overhire, which we do get from time to time. It's just on the wastewater discharge, and there is a project underway to address that issue. But apart from that, the other thing to note is that this report is for November.
Yes.
So the December and January reports are from Downers 1 report. So that'll be presented in the next meeting.
So I would take it that the wastewater issue that you've just raised happened in November and that would have been rectified by now.
It's still underway. They have to build a bigger UV unit on the back of that plant to treat that coal mine.
So how's that being treated now then?
There's a small UV unit.
Oh, okay.
If flows are high, it's not big enough yet. It doesn't get enough.
Okay. All right. Cheers.
Time.
Right. I'll open up for any questions from any of the committee members. Councillor Harper.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this Ojai E. coli, is this the same thing we had about 5 years ago, Bill?
On the wastewater,
Yes.
It happens a few times every year.
Okay. Yeah.
It's normally when we get high rainfall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Councillor Menzies.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions around the FOBO report, safety and training report. 2 comments to make. With regard to the incident around the school bus attempting to pass a cement truck in a 30-kilometre zone, Is further discussion held with the employer required there, given this is a school bus? So I was just wondering about the follow-up there. And secondly, there was just a matter where an overgrown flax bush hit the mirror on a truck. So does then the flax get removed? It was just a follow-up actions to those things. Is that the responsibility of the contractor, or how does that occur?
So the FOVO report wasn't my report, but someone else might be able to speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
There's probably nobody online, so we'll come back to you on that if you like, and we'll give you
Yeah, no,
feedback.
that's fine.
Yep, that's
Thank you.
excellent. Thank you for that. Councillor Douglas, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Bill, I mean, just looking at the weather and looking at the forecast, we could be facing a drier period going forward. So what challenges do you see that placing on our water infrastructure?
So, yeah, we're definitely seeing some issues. So we had that isolated dry week where Riverton came very close to running out of water. So we had part of Riverton was out of water. We had to cut it off at one point so we could do a repair. That's just demand. So we got a bit of rain straight after that, which people stopped using the sprinklers and it recovered very quickly. So we didn't put on a sprinkler ban district-wide at that point, but I think it's coming. We've got a conserve water advisory, which is just asking people to be mindful of their water use. But yeah, just looking at the way the rural schemes are performing, Kakapa in particular has been struggling for a while. So if that's an indication of the way the groundwater is going, then yeah, we definitely need to keep an eye on it.
Thank you.
But yeah, so the next step to answer your question will be hosing bans. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I see Councillor Duffy, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just regarding, I noticed the issue regarding fibre strikes on our network. Are we financially disadvantaged by that, or do we get compensation from the contractors, or how does it sort of work?
It varies, so it depends on how it's come about. So the majority of the fibre strikes that were occurring during the installation period, where they hit our assets, they were having to pay for those repairs. There were some situations where they were discovering assets that we didn't have records of. So they were our asset. They've been there a long, long time. We didn't have any record of them in that location. It's a bit trickier in that situation if they've made every appropriate attempt to avoid services and they still hit something in the ground, then it's either a cost share or we just have to repair that at our cost. But yeah, there's definitely an issue with the amount of fibre in the ground has gone up significantly, and now any contractors working in the ground have a lot more things to avoid. So it's definitely made the job harder.
All right. You're on mute, Paul.
In the meantime, we've been able to update our records of what we know of in the ground, I suppose.
Well, yes, by discovery in some instances. Yeah. So, some of there's old services which are either they're either obsolete but still live, which is not such a problem because we can fix that up, or they've just been poorly recorded along the way.
Okay.
So we're sort of through that part of it because most of the fibre's in now in the big towns. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Duffy. We have, I recall, discussed this in the past as well, and by memory, Council also advised them that they're updating their records. So it'll be useful. Any other questions? Okay, Bill, just if you can give feedback to Councillor Menzies with those 2 questions that she's asked, that would be appreciated. All right, I'll move that we receive this report. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Menzies. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate your time. We'll go to item 7.2, road operations. And it's going to be presented by Hartley. Hartley, I presume, we'll take it that the report has been read. So once again, just highlight any aspect that you think needs to be highlighted to the committee, or anything else that's come to hand since the report was written. That'll be appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning, councillors. So, yeah, as indicated, I take the report as being read, but like the previous report, it's slightly out of date. But overall, the operations, roading operations, is tracking well and on time. As per the report, and subsequently, generally we've seen lower service requests. I'd say that's predominantly due to the warmer, drier weather. And just, I suppose, added to that, but more of an update that all of our contracts, particularly around our pavement rehabilitations, are awarded and construction's well underway. And over the last month, or even pre-Christmas, really a big focus for the team, and that includes alliances, has been around the otter seals. A bit of work's been or a lot of focus has gone into those areas. I'll just update in terms of that question around the health and safety at Fulton Hogan area. So the flax, yeah, generally it would get programmed for trimming back or removal, depending on the extent of it. And then the school bus one, yeah, we do follow up where appropriate, whether it's a school bus or any other activity. You may have seen we do look at running awareness and safety campaigns. We did one jointly with ICC at the start of the construction season, just to highlight, I suppose, risks and motorists to be aware of those with construction sites, because yeah, people do tend to with a lot of construction works occurring around the district and around Invercargill, and that includes the state highways. People tend to become a bit impatient this time of the year. So yeah, hopefully that's answers that question, but happy to expand on that or get a bit more information if required.
Thank you for that, Hartley. Appreciate it. I'll open up for any questions from the committee. Yes, Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question on the dust suppression. I'd point to the note that the site-by-site assessments would have been done during January, with January being finished now. So have all those been completed, or they still need to be done? Or
so, through Mr. Chairman, so yeah, we have completed all the initial site assessments. There's a couple of learnings which we will report back on, I suppose, post the project in essence being delivered. But what we had a good number of applicants, was around the 70 odd from memory. We obviously prioritised that, assessed it, and had expressions of interest. What we did find, unfortunately, was we've sent out agreements and requested payment. To date, we've had 26 people signed up, and so there's potential capacity for another 10 for the season. But yeah, as I said, we've gone back, told people yes, they've qualified, haven't. But what we found is some people have, in essence, reneged post-Christmas. And so that's created a bit of an issue for us with, I suppose, that delta between what we potentially can deliver and what's actually been signed up to date. So it is still a bit of a work in progress, but sites have identified and work's underway with what we have in terms of agreements signed up.
So what's the next stage in the process, timing-wise, for people?
So for the physical works, as I said, are currently being undertaken as of today, to the best of my knowledge. So it's seeing how far we can get with that. It does create, from a physical construction point of view, we do run into some constraints because it's the same contractors doing the auto seals, also doing our reseals. So yeah, I think we raised that sort of pre-Christmas just as a bit of a risk as well, where it's a priority. So we're just keeping a bit of an eye on that and how that's tracking. If there is anything in terms of under expenditure for that, we'll look at carrying that over and in essence just having a larger program for this up and coming season. We'll have a lot more lead-in time for the next season because we'll look at advertising mid-year. So it gives a lot more time for individuals to assess whether they want to apply or not, identify those sites, get agreements in place well in advance of any physical works being undertaken. So next time round, it should be a much smoother process.
Exactly.
Comfortable with that, Councillor Scott? Thank you. Okay, Councillor Douglas?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Hartley, my question relates to the gravel build-up under our bridges, and I had a person ring me from Ardlussa in relation to the Tomo Gullick Bridge, and I've passed the information on to Rob. But yeah, the capacity of our bridges to handle flood flows is severely reduced if we don't do something about the gravel underneath them. And to me, it's a win-win situation. If we get rid of it, we get good roading material for us, and you know, it safer passage for the water under the bridge. So, what steps are we taking? You know, while the river flows are down, to undertake that gravel removal?
Through Mr. Chair. So, but I suppose a good example or recent example is the likes of Nokamai that we identified where we had excessive gravel build-up just upstream. We applied for a consent and we're extracting that gravel. I suppose one of the challenges is we do need a consent for extracting large quantities. That does take time, but also we need to ensure that where we can obtain, it's all good getting the gravel, but is the gravel usable for the quality for the type of use that we need it for? But also what is the cartage involved? Because while we might save on the raw material, if we got to end up carting it excessive distances to where we need to use it, then that savings is in essence lost, or it could even cost us more by the time you've gone through the whole consent aspect. But it is a good point around the risk, so that also needs to be balanced. Generally, with our bridges, particularly the more modern ones, there's secondary flow paths. So when we do have high level of flooding occurring, Waikai is a good example of that, where you have a secondary flow path. Yes, it does flow over the road, and the road can get damaged, but the cost of repairing the road versus the cost associated and the risk of losing the bridge is a lot different. So we do tend to have redundancies for a lot of those areas.
Can I just come in there as well? I mean, this is a district-wide issue, and you're absolutely right, Councillor Douglas. And it is of a concern that some of our bridges are, let's say, in jeopardy when we do have a high rainfall. So I certainly acknowledge that. I'm also aware that Environment Southland, to my knowledge, is also working on this because you know, we need to get together on this. And as you say, having separate individual consents for each bridge is going to take quite some time. So I think the approach, to my knowledge, and I do believe Mayor Tong may have been working on this some time ago with Environment Southland, that they have a more blanket approach so that we can actually look at all these bridges and take some of this gravel away from underneath the bridges. I know that even in my own area, some of the bridges only are working at 1/3 capacity, and that is of significant concern. And some of them are quite vital bridges. And as I say, they're throughout the district. That's where the problem is. So you happy with that response, Councillor Douglas, that we're on top and working with the Environment Southland?
Yes, and I've spoken to Environment Southland, and they are keen to support our getting application in principle.
That's right. Yep. No, that's good. Excellent. So I've got quite a few hands up, so I do note them all. So Councillor Ford, you're next.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. No, I was concerned that the dust suppression sequence, that the dust would have started a couple of months ago, and the time sequence from now on, as to if we do work on suppression from here on, will that still be suitable for next season, or what sort of durability are the people that are going to pay their money really going to get their money's worth? If Hartley could perhaps indicate.
So thank you for, so there's, while the full value of the dust suppression isn't achieved for 2 to 3 months as the product cures, there's from the get-go, in essence, after the first few weeks, there's already a reduction in dust. Considering, unlike, say, other dust suppression products that might be used, the otter seals do last for several years, as we've discussed previously, and therefore the benefits that you get also is 365 days of the year, as opposed to other treatments where it might only be for 6 to 12 weeks of benefit before it needs to be reapplied. So there's definitely a benefit from the get-go. In terms of the process, I suppose that's what we discussed for year one. There's always been a lot of pressure on, considering the funding process, setting up the actual whole process of how we deliver this. And that's just resulting in a compressed time frame, and we've had to manage that as best as we can.
Thank you, Hartley. I was just a bit concerned that we would be accused of being a bit tardy with our response. And whilst it is the first year, I understand that. But I take it that we'll be ready to race from here on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Menzies. You're on mute, Councillor Menzies. Yep.
Thank you. Took a wee while to sort that. I just wanted to say thank you to the team around the dust suppression, given it's not a long time since it was raised in the long-term plan submissions, and we have been able to address the concerns of some of those, and I don't know whether it was anybody that made submissions in the season. So many thanks for that. I also was wondering if there's follow-up to where the otter seal has been put down, so we can kind of measure the success of the implementation of the otter seal for those affected. So are we kind of aware of what the impact might be if there's a lot of heavy traffic using it, the speed of traffic, etc., or is there going to be no monitoring? Thank you.
I suppose I might be able to help there as well, Councillor Menzies. Hopefully we will have an opening of the Tianao wastewater scheme, and there are a number of roads in this area that have Otto seal on it. So it would be a good opportunity to be able to show those roads to you, and that certainly gives you an indication of how good this product really is. It might be useful.
Thank you, and it'd be good to be able to feed that information back to people who are considering putting this Otto seal down,
yes,
given what cost it has to the individual, and some of those who may have reneged may have been thinking about the cost and the length of time and that investment. So
yep, thank you. No, it's certainly a very good product. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just two questions. One to do with the gravel. I remember when I was a kid, when they were taking gravel out of rivers quite frequently, that a whole lot of farmers turned up with the trucks. Well, I guess farmers haven't got trucks to the same extent now, but surely could contractors cart gravel to farms as part of that it wouldn't just be exclusively an STC availability type of thing? Is that way you would think more gravel could get used if it was more readily available. So that's just one question. The other's about the dust. So I'm just wondering about the notification to people who weren't successful. Has that happened yet? And I think it wouldn't be a bad thing perhaps if the councillors knew who in their area was getting auto-sealed and who'd sort of missed out type of thing. We've been fielding quite a number of calls from people prior to this, and it would help, I think, if we had a bit more knowledge about it.
Thank you. So yes, we can share that information. We'll get in touch because we do have where all the applications have come from. So it's probably better just to get in touch individually in essence with the respective councillors. In terms of the notification, people have been, to the best of my knowledge, notified of that, of whether they've been successful and or not, as the case may be. Because obviously, as we discussed, an option is for those that have not been successful still to carry out the auto sealing, but at 100% cost to themselves. But I'll get in touch afterwards with a bit more detail and circulate that information as appropriate.
Thank you, Hartley. Councillor Ruttenclaw.
Thank you. Mine was around the otter seal too, Hartley. I had a friend last week. She didn't have any correspondence back from council. So when were correspondence and applicants advised of whether they were successful or not, just so I can check to her about it.
To the best of my knowledge, they were given a phone call, but as I said, I'll double check on that and then circulate any information I do have at hand.
That would be great.
Thank you.
And I can get in touch with her. Appreciate that. Everything else has been answered. Thanks.
Okay.
Yes, Matt, got your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, councillors. Just a quick couple of comments in relation to the dust suppression. Thank you for your comments, Councillor Menzies. I just want to reiterate that the speed at which the team was able to get up and running with this new level of service and significant implication on resources. It took one of our staff effectively out of action full time for about 6 weeks to this point, and that will continue for some time yet as we seek to close out this new level of service. So, as part of the feedback loop following this first season of trialling this level of service, or the introduction of this level of service, we are pretty keen to do a bit of a wrap up at the end and come back to services and assets via a workshop and have a bit of a discussion around what worked well, what didn't work so well, perhaps get some feedback from yourselves in terms of the whispers and jungle drums that you're hearing out in the district as to the suitability of the level of service and how we've sought to go about this dust suppression, and what tweaks might be necessary moving forward to I guess hone the process. So yeah, in short, Councillor Menzies, it's certainly our intention to both monitor the performance of the service, not just the performance of the product, but the performance of the communication, the process, the engagement with the individual residents, and refine that moving forward. And at the same time, as I said, provide some feedback as to the implication on internal resourcing and what that means as to what else slips, because it does have an implication on the team and the resource. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I appreciate your comments. And as you've identified, it's a new level of service, and you'll take a full analysis of how that service has been provided, warts and all. So we'll look forward to that in due course. I see Councillor Owen, you've just raised your hand.
Yeah, thank you. Matt, just also as part of that review, if we could also have an update on the potential suitability of targeted rates as a mechanism for that, for those who found it too hard to raise their sides of funds. I think it would be important to have an update on that, please.
It's a good idea. Yep, it's good. Councillor Menzies, you still have your hand up. Are you requiring a no? No. Okay, thank you. I don't see any further hands up, so I will take it that the question time has been completed. So I'm happy to move the recommendation that we receive this report. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Scott. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Good debate. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we go to page 33, Service and Asset Program, and presented by Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps if we take the meeting or the minutes as read as per the last.
Yes.
Yep. And I will probably just give you an update, a verbal update on the December figures, which I have now received from Finance.
Thank you.
So I guess if you do look at the costs, actual costs year to date to October, we were sitting at about 7.2 million. Costs to November, just over 12 million, which is around 24% of our total program. To December, we're actually sitting at 14.5 million, or approximately 29% of our program. Those increases have been due to tenders, obviously, that have now basically just got underway. There's another heap of work which is about to start shortly. Those increases have been in the community facilities area, around 200k for December this is, in transport and roading around 2 million, transport other 60,000, and in the three waters around 2.3 million. So look, I guess at the end of the day, generally our busiest months are February, March and April, just given the weather. The increase in those capital works that happen, which are generally weather related. So yeah, I'm confident that we've got, with all the tenders that we've let or that are about to start, that we're well on track for getting through, or certainly giving it a red hot run to get pretty close to our total program.
So just clarify for myself, if I heard you correctly, some of those costs are escalating?
Yes, they are.
Yes, and can you identify what's driving those costs and what impact that will have on our budget?
What tends to be driving the increase in costs is the fact that our subcontractors appear to be incredibly busy already. The prices that we appear to be getting in are somewhat, it appears to be, if they get the work, great, they'll make it happen. If they don't get the work, they're already busy enough, and it's sort of no skin off their back. We are obviously recognising the earlier we get in and get work tendered, the better for us. It then can obviously be put into a work program. Even if it's a later delivery, we can still get the delivery within this financial year. Obviously COVID has material delays has obviously somewhat played a part, but all we're doing is allowing a longer lead-in time or a longer construction time. So look, as I said, we're still confident that we're going to get fairly close to our total program delivery, but yeah, we just need to allow a little bit for those delays, COVID delays, later delivery of work programs from subcontractors.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that some of the pressure points and getting the deliveries completed, fully understand that, but I'm also very concerned, or becoming concerned, that the increase in costs are certainly going to have an impact on our overall budget and our LTP. So I just indicating a concern and hope that's being monitored as closely as possible, how we can actually manage that. I'm sure that you'll be doing that.
Absolutely.
Question, Bruce Ford.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was curious to ask Brendan if how the Kepler bailage is going, both growth and the finance return on it, just because of the dry situation, whether in fact we're on the right end of watering, or how does that work? And certainly the return on the bailage would be appreciated.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's unfortunately a question that I can't answer. I did hear that the first cut of the bailage had been completed in January, but as far as the financial return on that, sorry, it's something I couldn't make comment on. I can advise Councillor
Ford that around the entire discharge area, it's brown, totally burnt off, and where the discharge field is, it's nice and green. So it's certainly growing significantly with the wastewater going on there. But as I say, all around it is totally brown, burnt off, and here's this beautiful green area that's being harvested for bailage. So yeah,
I'm sure we should endorse that as being a win. Thank you very much.
Exactly.
That'll be fine.
Yeah. Councillor Harper. You're on mute, Councillor Harper. Yep, you're all good.
Right, just a question from Brendan around the Eastern Bush water main replacement. Brendan, is the Eastern Bush water supply and the Otahu Flat water supply now all conjoined under Eastern Bush, or is that Eastern Bush water main replacement actually refer to the rising main at the Otahu Flat water supply?
Apologies, Councillor Harper. That's a question that I can't answer either. I don't have the I don't have the knowledge on whether they've been joined or not.
No, you can provide that information back to Councillor Harper after the meeting.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. Any other question, Councillor Harper?
No, thanks. No.
Okay, Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just following on from your own question to Brendan around cost increases, Brendan, are you able to quantify the percentage increase in unit costs of work from last year to this year?
To do that accurately, we'd probably, I'm just thinking how we could do that accurately with having different scopes of work from last year to this year.
Can I help you out there? That's a very good question, Councillor Douglas, and I think that's something that you might want to work on in the background. And maybe at a future date, we can look at that information in a public excluded area or even in a workshop. Might be very useful.
Absolutely.
You okay with that, Councillor Douglas? We will get the information.
Yeah, because I mean, as you indicated, it's a very important component to our budgeting going forward. You know, we've got the issue around the capacity of the contractors, and we've got the issue around price increases.
Correct.
Both of which can impact negatively on the work that we get done.
Correct. No, that's good.
Absolutely.
So you okay with that, Brendan? You'll work on that sort of in the background?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Okay, Councillor Menzies. I'll work across the screen. I see there's a number of hands up. I will get to you, everybody. So Councillor Menzies.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the mowing contracts, there is advice that there'll be some variations to the existing contracts due to some areas that were not identified on the mowing maps. Are these new areas, or are they is it just that they weren't identified on the mowing maps, and what implications do they have for cost increases, percentage cost increases?
Through you, Mr. Chair, look, this is an assumption. I am assuming that whoever's priced to do the mowing contract had priced it off a map that they were given with areas that they were given, and that's the cost indication that they've given back to council. if there were other areas that have been identified, I guess they would be what we would call a variation, and therefore weren't included in the first pricing, I suppose, and then obviously need to be discussed and quantified and then given back to the community facilities team to add those costs on.
Thank you. I understand the process. I'm just wondering why they weren't identified. Is it just an error in the map, or is it new areas being added?
I can see, sorry to interrupt, I can see Mr. Hamlin wanting to interject there, so he may have an answer for you.
Morning, Mr. Chair and councillors. It's a mix of things in regards to when those contracts were renewed. Obviously, when the maps were put in place, that was the knowledge that was of the mowing areas at the time. What was found in some areas was some of the operators were mowing areas that were outside of the original, I guess, contract. That obviously weren't found until such time that new contractors were awarded, and obviously the work started, and we found that there were some areas that were being missed. So there was, and probably those were actually being mowed at the cost of the previous operator. So it is a mix of things. It's not just one thing in regards to where those have been missed, but the community facilities team are working through those on each of them and resolving them where need be. There will be some cost increase variations in some areas.
Thank you. So that included an assessment as to whether the areas did need to be mowed on an ongoing basis before confirming that was to occur.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Councillor Byers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just around the Three Waters, and it's good to hear that the concerns being raised about the cost increases. I know that there's also some concerns around the ownership of this infrastructure and the control of this infrastructure going forward. And there are some councils up and down the country who have similar concerns.
Can I'll just come in here. We're not actually debating or discussing this at this stage. Just to advise you, Councillor Byers, that there will be a separate meeting to discuss the Three Waters. So if you could refrain from questioning at this stage and hold those questions till we have a further meeting on the Three Waters, which will provide you with a very significant opportunity to raise those matters.
When is that meeting?
We are working on that at the moment, so hopefully prior to the 11th of February. If we can get all our ducks in a row, we're looking at, as I say, prior to 11th of February.
Okay, that's going to be one of our public meetings.
So thank you for that. All right.
I've got another question though.
Yes, sure.
Yep. Around the mowing of the lawns, Nick, has any consideration been given to leaving some of those spaces unmown? We had some concerns raised recently, and a lot of gardeners, I think, have noticed a lack of bees around this year and the other little bugs and insects. And when you can leave some spaces unmown, it provides a great habitat for these insects, and of course at the same time a saving for the ratepayers. So we've been giving any concern to areas that we can leave unmown?
I think that I really support your concept, Councillor Byers, and I think that's an opportunity for your community boards to clearly identify some areas that they believe could be put aside for exactly what you're talking about. So I think it's got to start at a community board level that would identify those areas, and then it would come to a workshop as part of the LTP discussion, and that would certainly have an impact at that stage. So I would encourage you to actually interact with your community board and see whether or not they have some areas as well. And I would encourage every other councillor to do exactly the same thing. If there are areas in their own localities that could be set aside for exactly that.
Well, of course, we could do it the other way, Mr. Chairman, and leave all these areas unmown, and then the council, if they want to get some mown, interact with the community boards and suggest that they mow certain areas, and everything else leaves unmown.
In my view, Councillor Byers, you got it the wrong way around. This is an opportunity for communities to clearly identify what their requirements are within their communities. I do not believe that this committee should impose that sort of structure to our communities. Our community boards are there to support their communities, identify what's important to their communities. So once again, I just encourage every councillor to have those discussions at their community boards when they meet, because I think it's got a lot of merit. But let's let the communities identify areas that they think could be put aside for that.
Okay, well, I just heard that there was some extra mowing being done. I thought that perhaps some of that was unnecessary.
No, I think it was identical. Well, let's just leave it at that. But anyway, as I say, I encourage you to talk to your community board and make a start there. Who's next? I've got Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on that mowing, I know out here in this ward that the community board spent a lot of time looking at the maps of the areas to be mown before the contract was put in place. And I sort of think that, I'm not sure whether that happened in all other wards or not, but if it did, you would think it might have gone a long way to avoiding that issue. Anyway, the question I was really going to ask was just, I noticed about the gardening contracts and the issues regarding individual contractors and the traffic management issues, etc. And I'm just wondering if, I'm thinking of this area here, but I'm sure it's elsewhere, where some of the gardens actually aren't on the road as such. And I'm wondering if we might be some thought given to perhaps splitting contracts so that more local people could do these ones that aren't so where traffic management isn't so necessary. I presume that where traffic management is an issue is where there's centre plots with traffic going down both sides of them. A lot of the curbside gardens that I'm aware of out here, traffic isn't really an issue as long as the gardener doesn't stray onto the actual carriageway. So I don't know, I just wonder if we need to perhaps look at that and split things up a bit differently or something just to get the work done. And with the ability to use local people.
Nick Hamlin, you want to make comment?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the community facilities team work pretty closely with all the community boards around the level of service, both for mowing and the gardens. In recent years, we've really struggled actually to get locals to do the work, to price the work, just because often the scale of it. One little garden plot in one town, often there's not a lot of appetite for local contractors to be able to do that work. And then obviously the cost for them to be trained in STMS and the like is a greater cost than what it would be to do the work. So what the team have been doing though is working with community boards in regards to those key garden areas that they wish to keep and looking where they could rationalise some. And also in regards to the STMS, there's obviously, while there's a centre plot, there's effectively a road corridor. So whether you're on the road or well off to the side of the road, you're still in that road corridor. So you're still required to maintain obviously STMS controls. We had worked quite closely with the Waikaia Progress League, who have actually done a really good job of setting themselves up with STMS training and systems to do that locally. So they are a good example of where the locals have gotten behind and able to do those contracts. And I'd suggest if locals are wanting to do that, that's definitely a good avenue through a Progress League type organisation to be able to look at those sorts of contracts.
Thank you for that. Councillor Owen.
Thank you. My comments are a little bit similar along the lines as to Councillor Duffy's, but it seems that putting things into larger contracts hasn't necessarily worked in all cases in terms of attracting suppliers. And I wonder if there is an opportunity for us to think differently on how we do that, and perhaps flip our thinking a little bit in terms of how we can make the COVID shortage of supplies and stuff work in our favour, in terms of a lot of our suppliers might have other jobs on the go or planned that they're having hold-ups for supply reasons, and they might find themselves with downtime between jobs. And if there's other council-related jobs that are smaller contracts that they could pick up, then that might be a way that we could get some of the work done. It's hard to give specific examples when I don't know the exact list of what hasn't been able to attract suppliers, but just encourage us to think a little bit differently and how we can do that. And also another question, just because you touched on it just before around the road safety. We have previously talked about whether we can offer some sort of road safety training and potentially make that available to community groups. And so I just wondered if any progress had been made in that space.
Nick, you able to make comment?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Councillor Owen, for that. We earlier or late last year, we run a workshop with obviously contractors and suppliers, and we actually had really good feedback from a number of smaller local type contractors. And one of the things that they had highlighted to us is they wanted longer contracts. So a lot of the locals were hoping that some of the contracts were for either 3 or 5 years, where they could know that they've got a reasonable amount of work. They could resource for that. They could buy gear and equipment for it. So we have had good engagement from the local contracting market and working through different ways that we could actually look to procure that work. Obviously, we're already in the midst of an LTP year, but it's definitely something that we're looking at for following years, how we actually package work up and how we make that, I guess, advertising to whether it's a local contractor or a larger contractor into the area. So it will always be a mix, but we're definitely trying to look at how we do things differently and make it viable for the local contractors. In regards to the STMS training, that's ongoing. Ben and the roading team have actually put together a bit of a book on the how to, what you need and who needs it. I know that we've rolled that out to staff, but probably the next step would be to have that conversation with community boards as well. Sorry, that's probably as much of an update as I've got on that one.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harper.
Oh, I suppose I'm still on mute.
No, you're right, you're on.
Oh, right.
Well done.
Okay. Right, just, yes, Mr. Chair, in regards to the gardening, you'll see two and a half you mentioned there. We have had the same issue out here with not being able to do the gardens on the edge of the carriageway. The solution that we've come up with temporary is to employ one of our locals to do all the gardening that are not involved in the carriageway. And South Roads are doing the gardening that is involved in the carriageways. This is a temporary solution, we hope. We are actually looking at, or the community board is actually looking at doing a bit of a run round and get somebody that's keen, which we have got, we believe, in town. And community board will probably pay for the SDMS, and then they'll be able to do the gardens for us. And hopefully that will give a local person the opportunity to do this. Now, this doesn't only include gardening to have the SDMS qualifications. It also includes when you have a function, be a Christmas party, RSA and stuff like that. They're in the town, living in the town, and they can do the traffic control. So that's where we're at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. I have a few concerns with your approach, which I'll discuss offline. I think might be useful. Appreciate your initiative.
Yep.
But there's a couple of issues that I would like to discuss with you. Okay, Councillor Byers, you still have your hand up. Did you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it was down. It's back up again, and just wanted to support Councillor Duffy and Owen, this idea around local contractors being enabled to do the work in their local communities. And as far as the gardening goes, the STMS traffic management does seem to be something that holds back the local folk from doing these gardens. And I guess it's been covered already, but on the 23rd of November, I think Nick was going to share some information with the community boards around that STMS traffic management. So thank you. That's been covered, and Nick's going to do that. So that's great. Thank you.
Good on you. Thank you. Any further questions on this topic? It's been very good debate, good discussion. There being none, I'm happy to move that we receive the report. Could I have a seconder for the thank you, Councillor Harper? All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is 7.4, health and safety, presented by Terry Black. Terry available? Oh, there we go. Yep.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, and good morning.
Good morning. So I'd like to take this report as read and comment on a couple of points in the report, and then I'll take any questions. So first and foremost, our event reporting. You'll see in our dashboard along the lower left that a majority of our event reporting in regards to employee health and safety this year to date is safety observations. We introduced a safety observation function when we invested in new health and safety management software end of 2019. This function has been really good for measuring the presence of safety, which is just as important as recording when things aren't going so well or aren't as safe as they could be. The safety observation function supports this through the opportunity for our people to not only report unsafe practice or conditions and create corrective actions, but to also record observed safe practice and safe conditions. We're always really quick to point out what's not quite right, but not always that quick to identify good health and safety practice and record that. And another point I'd just like to talk to is our COVID-19 response at the moment. We are, as the National Protection Framework changes, we continue to adjust how we engage with our contractors and ensure that we navigate those changes together, that we keep in touch with our contractors in regards to our COVID response. And we've also been supporting some of our smaller contractors with site-specific safety plans in regards to COVID-19 risk management, just to make sure we all line up with the same expectations and the same controls. Thank you. Any questions?
Open up for questions to the committee. I see Councillor Byers, you have your hand up. Is that a question or no? Well, Terry, I think there's no questions for you at all. Must be a very good report. Well done.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, there'll be no questions at all. I'll move that we receive the report. I'll have a seconder for that, please. Thank you, Councillor Scott. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Carried. Thank you. That is the end, to my knowledge, of the formal meeting, and we will now go into public excluded. So I will move that we go into public excluded. Do I have a second for that, please?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, we have to allow Steve Canny in as well for the topic. So, yep.
Yep, I realise that.
Cool.
So still call for a seconder, please, to move into public excluded. Thank you, Councillor Byers. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Aye.
Thank you. So we'll just have a
Rick,
small
yeah.
moment to allow